This video is brought to you by Squarespace. When it comes to websites, online stores, etc., there's no place to build a beautiful online presence like Squarespace. If you haven't noticed, in the last 10 years, there have been a lot of movies, big movies, that look like this. A box, otherwise known as the 4:3 aspect ratio. 4:3 has gotten extremely popular as of recent, so much so that it's looked at as a gimmick amongst some film fans. And yeah, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and everyone has different tastes, but I think that this comeback of the 4:3 aspect ratio is a lot more than just filmmakers following a trend, and is in fact an argument for the state of film right now. Let's talk about the background for a second. See, 4:3 has been around. In fact, it was the only way to shoot a movie in the early days of cinema due to technical constraints. It wasn't until 1952 that Cinerama came along, where they put 3 cameras together, and then 20th Century Fox came along and was like, this is a mess, and invented CinemaScope, a cleaner, more efficient way of doing widescreen film, which led to a new era of filmmaking. While most of this video is defending 4:3, it undoubtedly isn't and frankly shouldn't be used for every film out there. Back when it was the only choice, a lot of films, while still classics, often felt held back by the boxy look, unable to capture everything in the frame that they needed to, which is why once a new way of making movies came around, especially once widescreen became the norm and was more attractive to audiences, both studios and filmmakers were like, why the hell would I want this old thing? 4:3 was also kind of the standard for TV, and a lot of filmmakers would justify widescreen as being a reason to get out of the house and see a movie, because why settle for that much movie when you can get that much movie? But bigger doesn't always mean better, and sometimes a classic boxier look can do a lot more than one realizes. It's almost like history repeats itself. I don't want to make it seem like 4:3 is a new trend and it's groundbreaking for these recent films to use it, because it's been a choice. Gus Van Sant's 2003 film Elephant was shot in 4:3 at a time where it wasn't necessarily a trend, and went on to win the Palme d'Or as well as several cinematography nominations. The Artist, remember that movie? It also used 4:3 to accurately depict the time period it took place in, and went on to win Best Picture somehow. Point is, yeah, it's a choice. The same way black and white is a choice that's been pretty consistently used, but 4:3 is in right now, and in my little tiny opinion, I think that wave started with this guy. In 2015, Wes Anderson put out maybe his most successful film critically and financially at the time of recording this, The Grand Budapest Hotel, which was shot mostly in 4:3. Now this was also used to accurately depict a specific time period, but Wes modernized the look in a very cool way. The Artist does a great job at mimicking, but Wes introduces not only his own style, but he actually uses the box in a new and fresh way. There's this shot, the box shot, that uses the shot that looks like a box, for example. It wouldn't be nearly as visually satisfying if it were wide. The scattered boxes around the characters are carefully placed to create almost a circle surrounding them. There's also this one, which is an actual circle. With a wider aspect ratio, this would look kind of awkward, or they would at least have to light more of the surroundings, and at that point, there's more light in the shot than there is face. And if the whole takeaway from this shot is intimacy, then you lose that. Intimacy is a pretty common theme when you see filmmakers use this sort of filmmaking. The Grand Budapest Hotel, like most Wes Anderson films, is insanely rich with style, maybe even his richest at that point in his career, and with that budget behind the film, he was able to create a very good-looking movie. And in the process of doing so, he made 4:3 look really damn cool. And now I'm not saying filmmakers who used 4:3 after this were necessarily influenced by Wes, but I do think the choice to use 4:3 wasn't as risky thanks to the success of the Grand Budapest Hotel. It made over $100 million at the box office, it raked in a ton of nominations, including one for Best Cinematography. You know what was also nominated for Best Cinematography the same year? Ida by Pavel Pawlikowski. Now this movie, if you watched my video last week, I just love it. It's like the best looking movie ever, I think. And it looks, for 2013, like something from last year, which is my way of saying that it influenced, I'm sure, a ton of filmmakers. Both this and Grand Budapest Hotel raking in nominations the same year made 4:3 less of a choice for historical accuracy and more of one for aesthetics, which brings me to a certain company that I can't not mention. I'm sure you've heard of them. A24 is, first of all, a company, not a filmmaker, making movies, but they're also not the only company out there with films that use this style. But all of that said, I do think the most popular and successful films that use this style nowadays have happened to come out of them. The company has even acknowledged it themselves in a blog post all about 4:3. The aspect ratio has become such a popular choice for these modern art house films that you can't really deny its existence and power. As mentioned, 4x3, like black and white, is often being used less as a story thing and more as a, hey, that just looks kind of nice kind of thing. And for some reason, that's not a good enough reason for a lot of film critics. The argument there is that I guess leaning into styles that are hip today will make them ugly and dated in the future. Like, remember in 2012 when music videos just decided to fade the colors as much as possible? What the fuck was that about? I can agree with that argument, but I think the fact that 4x3 has always been around and is now just being used in a more purposeful way is exciting and is making for some really beautifully shot films, especially now that studios are starting to trust projects that want to be shot in this way. I think that what I love most about this style is how it's introduced a new kind of cinematic experience through its limitations. For the original form of making movies to come full circle and reinvent the medium is pretty sick in my opinion. What do you mean by this? Well, I have this very distinct memory of going to the movie theater at the Mall of America in 2016 and testing out their 4D Dolby Cinema seats or something like that, where mist sprays on you during water scenes and the seat rumbles with the score and the sound completely surrounds you. It's like another step up from the IMAX experience as far as immersion goes. And as you can tell, that didn't really take off, and I'm not some grumpy film snob who's like, back in my day, because I will come clean. Seeing First Man in a Dolby theater setting was sick as hell. I love seeing movies that way. You bet your ass I'm gonna get tickets to see Dune on the biggest screen possible, but it seems like filmmakers have loved leaning towards a larger scope for all of cinematic history, and now that we're at a point where we're spraying moviegoers in the face with water, maybe some people are like, well, you know what, let's slow down here, because there is a benefit to holding back, and there is a very unique and intense experience to be had with what you can't see on the screen. I think unfortunately now that streaming is becoming the norm and people are watching more stuff on their TVs at home, 4x3 kind of suits that experience as well, but I don't fully agree with that. I think it looks really great in a theater. But anyways, the best example of this in recent years is Paul Schrader's First Reformed. I truly do think this is the best use of 4x3 in the last decade. Schrader said in a documentary about the film that he wanted to draw the viewer in using the mundane. This lack of information, the blank space of it, is what is supposed to pull you in, which is a very tough sell that doesn't sound like it should work, but in actuality makes for one of the most transcendental cinematic experiences I've ever had. Taking away offers more insight in what the filmmaker wants you to see. In a movie like First Reformed, this is super important. It simplifies our worldview to match that of Toller's, so when he does start to go off the rails, the filmmaking subtly moves with him, sending us into the same spiral that he's in. A more recent release, Mogul Mowgli, offers the same sense of intimacy. Sure, you don't get the same scope of where these characters are, but you do get a much more introspective look into his arc. And all I'm really trying to say is that these kinds of stories, while I'm not saying they're the only way to properly make a movie, I think they're very exciting. While there's one approach to filmmaking that's pushing the boundaries as far as a larger scope can go, there's another side telling smaller stories with smaller formats, but achieving this same amount of thrill. And I just think it says a lot about how powerful movies are when all it takes is putting two black bars on the side of the screen instead of the tops to make a whole video about it. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Go watch a movie in 4x3 and form your own opinion. And before you head out, I want to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace, if you didn't already know, is a place where you can go online to build your brand. I know you've been waiting to build your brand, and the best place to do so is by making a website, whether it be an online store, a blog, a portfolio, you name it. They have a wide array of award-winning designer templates that'll make whatever that website is look sexy as hell, and they have 24-hour customer service to walk you through any issues you happen to run into. The best part about it all, though, is that if you go to squarespace.com/Karsten, you can get 10% off of your first purchase. So really, there's no reason not to give it a shot. So thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching this video. And hey, I'll see you guys in the next one.